Hey, we did it. All right, Nazare, at any time, if you're missing anything, just let us know, okay? So.
I will. Thank you so much.
Yep. The great thing about this one is don't have to go over my intro. You guys already got that, so that's good. Okay. All right. So this is part 2, and we'll deviate a little bit from it because just want to talk about what we did too over the past couple weeks, and want to talk a little bit about being up front, at the front, because I think we've had some really good success by a couple of certain things. So this one specifically is we did this already. So this is when people haven't had that class for a while. I'll give a little refresher, right? We did this part. You know who I am. Part 2 is developing partnerships and trust, leveraging technology, pre-approval in the mortgage loan process. How do I help pre-qualify as an agent? And then what's next? Okay, so if you Giver's Gain is a huge thing in what's called BNI, Business Networking International, and I'm a VP of a chapter locally, and I have 49 vendors. Those are some of the people that came that night to see you guys, right? Or that evening, day, I don't even know what it was now, but and one of the things that I position myself to be is connector to everything, right? Chin Chin, I met her last Tuesday when I was here at the office. Brandon introduced me, and they're very close friends. I didn't know, great stories about Brandon. Like, I didn't realize how connected they were with Brandon, and how much they're like his aunt and uncle type of thing, and but we talked about a mortgage, and they also had questions for a financial advisor, and they had questions for a trust attorney. So I've already connected them by the time they walked out of the office with 2 contacts. The more contacts you have with them that also promote you, the more sticky your client will be forever, right? And if you provide that kind of value, and I might get a loan working with their refinance, but I'd rather them be taken care of than that happens, because if we operate out of just giving and serving, you will have so much comeback, right? And that's also the same way to do the front door, right? I don't know if you were watching me approach the couple today, and let me preface this, like, this isn't me. This is I'm okay at this. There's people that are much better, I'm sure, but I've just got a lot of experience with customer service and making relationships. And I'm going to say that because when you're holding a 17-year-old girl's hand till she passes away, crying for her mommy, that's the ultimate type of customer service, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to make it a downer, but you have to understand, like, I've been super, super deep with people. Has nothing to do with sales. And if you realize that this is a friendship business, not a sales business, sales comes as a result of amazing friendships. So what our goal is to do out there is to make massive friendships. My goal to you has been to make massive friendships. I haven't called you once to say, do you have a client for me? Right? And I'll call you to see how I can help you. And yesterday, you guys called me for advice. Please, anytime. I love it. Like, and if I don't know, all those people I can connect you to for advice, So when we went out there, of course, if I go out there and I say, hey, hey, can I help you? Okay, let me know if there's any questions. People are just going to walk away. 99 times out of 100, right? Maybe even more. But if I go out there, Brandon and I sat out there for 2.5 hours, And I said, don't ever go to your desk. And even when he came back in, I'm like, what are you doing on your desk? He's like, I'm like, you can do that later, right? When you're not here at floor time. And Brandon really didn't love the floor time. If you guys see anyone needs to be admitted, just, I can't see it, so it'll say, right? It should say, someone waiting for admission. Brandon has been feeling down about floor time because it's no, 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 no. We had amazing conversations in 2.5 hours, right? And it's because I'm standing out front. It's a guy in a blue suit, all blue. Now that's an awesome suit, right? That is, and he comes immediately over. Body language in these types of situations are everything. And understanding, I'll do a disc profile sales too, which understands personality types, because some people watch you get to the point and some people love the big old story around the world and back. And then there's the people in between, right? So when you get out there and people, I'll give you several different examples of what happened just the other day. But ended up meeting this guy. He comes over, of course, anyone loves a compliment. He comes over, he Christian, goes to church, same church. Well, by the end of the day, Brandon's coming to my church on Sunday. I didn't even ask him to. I just spoke about it so much because everybody that I had in common with out there, almost every one of them went to my church, right? It's so funny. You're like, because it's a big church, you know? And that's another thing, what I mean by groups and organizations are huge, because it's another thing to have in common with people. Brandon is younger, and I want to use Brandon as a case study because he hasn't traveled the world. He hasn't had a lot of time to have the 54-year-old experience that I have. And I even tell him, I have an advantage over you, but I didn't at your age. It takes time to learn these things with people. We had a great conversation with that guy. He's a business developer. Like, may not buy a house, but he's a connector. He invited Brandon to a networking event, right? That's all we're looking for. We had another couple that they didn't really want to turn, but I told Brandon, watch the body language on everybody I talk to, and we will know whether we're going to have a conversation with them or whether they just want to get the heck out of there, right? Because no matter how good you are, they're going to be people that just don't care or want to talk to you at all. So we're out there, we talked to another client, and I saw him walk past. We had come in for a second, and we are kind of in there, and I saw him walk past, and they had a goodie bag, and I said, "Hey, what's in the goodie bag?" I said, what are your leftovers today? They were at season 52, and she told me everything that was in the bag. And I said, how did you like season 52? And they thought it was good. And at the same time, the body language is looking at the door like this. She was turned like this. He was like this, looking at the door. And he started kind of backing up a little bit, and you could tell that they were wanting to exit the conversation at first. And I said, great. I said, it's the first time you've been there. I just kept talking to them about that. And he goes, and then finally, after a little bit of conversation, he goes, "You're trying to sell us real estate?" I said, "Nope, I'm trying to sell you a friendship, and it's free," right? That's it. And we didn't talk about real estate once until the end. They always come back because they know that's what you're doing. But we just had a good conversation. We had a couple from Columbia that we were able to convert as an actual lead for Leslie. We had another couple, and I also say this, I'd rather know that I don't align with them right now than to try to chase something that I felt like I missed, right? So we had two people out there. They were like right next to each other. Oh, and by the way, when I said friendship to the guy, his body language went from this to this. And I'm like, we have a conversation, right? So those are the things that we're looking for. We're just looking to be ourselves. We're looking to find the common denominator you guys have with someone. Where are you from? Well, from Pennsylvania. Oh, I was just there. We were just there. I've never been to Pennsylvania. What do you love about Pennsylvania? What brought you here? What do you love about here? You will find something that they love that either you can ask questions about. I've never heard of that kind of occupation. What does it do? Like, that's, just more questions, more questions. Be interested, not interesting, is very huge. But the couple that were like right next to each other, I said, so what catches your eye? What do you love? What catches your eye? And they're like flat out, and Brandon's watching them flat out ignore me. And finally I got them to turn around, and he turns around and he goes, well, who are you? I said, well, I'm Tony. Who are you? Like, and he goes, what catches my eye or what grabs my attention is the chocolate next door. I said, fantastic. They have amazing chocolate next door. And he just wanted to exit the conversation. There was nothing I was going to do to turn him around, because at the same time he's talking, he's doing this, right? But it's okay. I learned, we're talking, I still had a positive conversation with him. Just had no interest in having any conversation with people. And that's okay. We're going to find that, But if I am intimidated to just go out there and just strike up a conversation, I'm going to miss a lot of it. And it was just 2.5 hours. And then we had a lady finally come, and this was the best part. We had a lady finally come, and she is going through a divorce. She's a wreck. She's upset. She goes, she's been to Bayside once. I'm connecting her to divorce care, right? To serve her soul, to help her heal. And at the same time, she's looking for a property. Brandon's now going to take her out on showings. And she was pre-approved. I said, well, who are you pre-approved with? And she said, Buddy Moore. I said, I know Buddy Moore. He's a great guy. I'm not going to steal his business. You've got a good approval, right? Because that's not my, right? If I have someone that's really great that I know is working with them, I will talk them up. But if they're working with an internet vendor, I won't badmouth it, but I will say, people know me here. They know with rockets, sometimes they explode. Okay. So we have to, sometimes they go off really well and make it to the moon, but sometimes they don't. And I'm known for that not happening, and list agents know me, and it's valuable to use my services because most list agents says if you either know me or heard of me or can easily find out who I am by just asking. And my reputation is important, right? So those things I'm going to convert, banks, stuff like that. But if I know a really not so good loan officer, I'd love to give you a second opinion. That's all I'll ever do, right? Because if we just talk positive about people all the time and sometimes we're ready to go to oh, well, that's a terrible company to work with. Caldwell Banker, are you kidding me? Like, oh man, they're not, right? It's better to just, acknowledge them as being competent, but you're more competent, right? So that being said, clients I met Tuesday already have a meeting here today, and I'm connecting them for attorney, for a trust, and a financial advisor. They're happy with their financial advisor, and they're still going to meet with the one that I've recommended. They could be happy with their pre-approval. They could be happy with their realtor. Still meet with them, as long as they don't have a signed agreement. So these are the people that you guys should align with, right? Gertie Homestager. Birdie Wolf, get to know her. She's a fantastic home stager, right? I'd be very careful. There's home stagers that are realtors, and there's lenders that are realtors. And I don't know about these, right? But there are appraisers that are realtors, but they have to stay in their lane. They won't jeopardize their job. That's the only ones that you can be like, okay, no problem, right? But other agents, we know they're agents and we use that. I will have a need for a listing, and the realtor working with them just hasn't found anything because it's not on the MLS. It's not coming up on the search criteria. And sometimes it's one thing off on the search criteria that you missed a perfect property on, right? So that's why sometimes when we're searching, we expand our search criteria a little bit to see if something works, right? Just, and I recommend never putting someone on an auto drip unless they're just leads. But if you've got a pre-approved client with money, personal selection only. That way you don't show 7 properties on Saturday, right? You help select them and narrow them down and preview them and pay attention to them and be very a concierge realtor. They're going to, because here's the thing, they go to a list agent like, well, yeah, I mean, I'll just work with you. All the other agent had was a drip. They say that. Because I'll ask, are you working with an agent? Yeah, but they're just dripping me. And they don't have value in that. So those are the ones that I'm like, well, who is it with? And if I don't know them, I try to get them to an agent I know. They're easy to pick off. You don't want to be easy to pick off, right? Provide value. Are you hearing everything, Nazare? She fell asleep.
I kept trying to hit the unmute button. Yes, I am hearing everything. Sorry.
I just want to make sure. All right.
Yes, I am.
So,
thank you.
So there's tons of services, right? Again, the more you give, the more you're, and I had this out there the last time, because this is one of the most important things for you to do in a relationship. I talked to them for 5 minutes about business. The rest of it was about them, about Brandon, about learning what they love. 5 minutes about business. Don't go for the kill too quickly. And they actually brought it, like, I kind of wait till they bring up the business even, too. Or hey, we got a few more minutes left. Let's actually talk about what we came here for, So things that people look for, okay, and things that they're going to look for in you, and that you look for in the people that you want to align with, right? And this goes back to carpet cleaner, like whatever you've got, hairdressers. Your hairdresser, if you love them, especially your hairdresser, like if you got a barber that you love and you find something that you love, if you're not happy with something that you're getting as an experience, go find the best one. Because when you can become a commercial about the experiences that you have, that is just one more thing in your pocket to be able to talk to someone about. So if there's anything that's going on that you can't rave about in your life, change it, right? Because the more you become a raving fan of others, like, you don't have to talk about yourself. You get asked about yourself, right? So quality, length of time living in the area, sphere of influence, hours of operation, responsiveness, consistency. If I want to align with a title agent, I'm going to look to see how social they are, how many other people recommend them, whether or not me aligning with them is going to gain me sphere of influence, right? Especially if it's sphere of influence in areas that I don't have. But for instance, if I work with a title company, I'm also updating that title company and asking them, do you have any realtors that are unhappy with their current lender, or anything going on with them that is not working out right? So, and I'm fishing for everybody's business that I know, right? Because that is just a segue eventually into your working with them, right? So I'm fishing for people that need movers, that need plumbers, that need all of the different things. So when you do start aligning with them, give them time, give it time to learn about them. So, oh yeah, I got your card order for you. Hey, here, I got this card from somebody, right? I can refer a Beacons mover and I'll be like, here is a card to a Beacons mover. Or one of my favorite people to refer ever is Blake and Ashley Fitzpatrick from Sunshine Movers, because I get happy when I talk about them, because I know so much about their business, and it's such a great business. And people are excited after I'm done, and they're always using them, you know? So learn about their business, develop trust and loyalty, and try to make it a two-way street with them. You know, if I refer you, is there a chance that you will also refer me and talk highly about me, right? And continue so I have to do this with realtors that I'm working with, because I want to provide a lot of value. And at the same time, if I've expressed to someone how to pre-qualify a client, and they look like they're closing all these great deals, but I'm only getting the ones that aren't good, that's not a valuable return proposition for me, you know? Because there are people that you will dazzle all the tough ones, but then they get a Wells Fargo approval and they're like, okay, we'll just deal with that, you know? It's great if I fight for you guys, you know, you fight for me. If you fight for a mover, they should fight for you. If you know, you're all in this, and you know, you don't have to be in a BNI to make it work, right? You don't have to be. So, and this is important. Look how they fix mistakes or things that come out of left field, right? And how interested are they in you personally? Like, are you just telling me that, you know, somebody knows, or are they really take an interest in, you know? So, and are they accountable themselves for their own stuff? Because if they're not, they'll never be accountable for yours. You know, it's super important to know that. And make, you know, something that's not here, but part of the accountability. If you hear somebody blaming a lot of problems on something else, that's typically not a good business practice, right? So, all right, so Jocko Willink, Stream Ownership, I think we should all do it as a group when we get a chance, if you guys are interested. But you must own everything in your world. There's no one else to blame. Jocko Willink, right? It's almost like I know this class. I actually designed and developed this class, you know, and I haven't taught this version in a long time. So it's good that it just comes. So I'm lucky. Leverage technology, right? So if sometimes brokers provide amazing technology, and sometimes there are some lacking areas of technology. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know all of your technology, but I'm going to describe technology that you guys can leverage that's mine, that it will be yours. And if you guys have a Google phone number and I texted you, I believe, I don't know if I texted everyone the link to this app, but I can get the app on your phone. And what's amazing about using the app is that when you send it from you to a client, it automatically lets me know who's your client. And if you open the app and you've got 8 clients with me, you'll see every one of them and where they're at, right? And you'll know whether or not they've gotten their documents in, whether or not you sent it and they actually started at all, right? Or if you can see that documents are working, right? And that's a good accountability tool for your client How many times I had a person take someone out 2 weeks in a row. Oh yeah, they're supposed to get that application in. Finally start getting the application in and they stop because they are not approved. They knew it and they knew they weren't going to be, and they were just spinning the wheels of that agent, you know? So we tend to have a scarcity mentality of, if I don't take them out now, I will lose them as a client. But are they really a client, and are they really going to buy from you? You got to find that out too. And it's okay, because the more time you spend with actual clients, and that time, instead of spending with a client that might or might not ever work out, you spend that time prospecting, is more powerful and more beneficial to you, right? Amy. So Amy is Academy Mortgage for You. It connects with this, and it is artificial intelligence that makes sure that we're sending title on time. It automatically it looks like a person sending out the title request. It does so much stuff for us. And while someone's filling out an application here, I'm going to get notification later while I'm teaching this class that Amy brought in the application, checked the credit, checked all these things, and said, hey, we've got a pulse. I still have more work to do. But also on a Friday night, if I'm at dinner and you guys happen to meet someone at dinner and somebody just sends it out and they got a 400 credit score, I can immediately tell you guys, hey, this is not going to go anywhere. We got to get credit repair. And it's easier that way. It's so much nicer to be able to say, this is not working. This is not going to go anywhere. Academy Connect is really cool. And especially when people move here, Academy Connect reaches out to your clients and says, hey, do you need help with the security system, with whatever? Do you need help with getting your internet turned on, your power turned on? Do you know who the power companies are? They call and concierge to help them move into their house. Right. So when I'm doing that on the insurance end, on the moving end, and trying to help make sure that your clients are just surrounded with best experiences. List reports. This is something free to you, except for printing. When you print out the material, you just pay for the printed material, but anytime you have a list go in, it will automatically populate in your list reports, create a series of reports that show, actually, I think, sitting there talking about them here. This is the My Mortgage app, right? It takes about 5 minutes for them to fill it out, unless they don't know their information. It might take 20. On this app, there is calculators. There's all sorts of tools. There's also some extra tools like markets in a minute tool that just teaches you weekly to see how the market's doing. It's just a button you can push. Amy, Academy Connect, list reports. This automates your stuff. It'll send you the list reports. It's got about 12 different reports, just sold, just listed, under contract, all of the things, social shares for your social, for all your Instagram and stuff like that.
There was another thing that
Yeah.
like maybe a year or so.
You can change the lender name
Okay. Oh.
and put me in it if you would like to.
Yeah,
right?
how do you do that?
We can walk through that. Yeah.
Probably somewhere in the settings.
Yeah, it's in the settings.
Okay.
It'll show you who you're connected with, and you can find it.
Do we need probably like your number?
No, you just put Tony Fitzgerald, it'll come up.
Okay.
It should.
Cause they have some great marketing and stuff, do we?
Oh, do they?
Posts? Yeah, and we can.
Great marketing
It'll
stuff.
put like Living Rooms
Yeah.
logo and
Yeah.
probably simply sold to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, you can update your logos in there. So, yeah.
Right.
And typically, I'll help do that too. So whatever you guys need help with. Rate plug, that's something that connects to your MLS that lets you help have information on financing on your MLS. Okay, so you can connect to me through that. You can request that right through your MLS to connect to me. And then HomeBot. This is by far the best thing that I've ever signed up for. It costs me more money a month, but I think it costs $20 I want to say it's a year. I don't think it's a month. I think it's a year to be a part of HomeBot. You can get the free version, but the paid version allows you to upload all of your contacts, right? And it is the best thing that I've ever used, because for whatever reason, when people see this and not Zillow, they want to use this, and it's more accurate information than Zillow about. It tells them how much equity they might have in their house. It tells them what they can do with their equity in their house by investment properties. It's constantly telling them, and the open rate on these, and I can look at it right from my phone. Just gonna open it up real quick. So you guys understand open rates on emails. They're very low on your drip. They're very, or on standard emails for people, they're very low. The open rate on these are typically 70%, right? So right now for homeowners, the opens are 77%. For buyers that haven't bought a home, it's 64%. For clicking and continuing, it's only 2% for buyers, because I got a ton of junky leads from Boomtown in there. And for homeowners, the click-in rate to understand what's going on with their market is 47%, right? And it'll say buyer reviewed markets, seller wants, it'll say seller wants CMA, right? And it'll give a CMA, but then when the realtor that is connected to me and that seller doesn't, like, I will also call, hey, I don't know if you saw on HomeBot, but they looking for a CMA. It looks like these activities, these people are ready to buy, right? Or thinking about it. So it's kind of cyber stalking their clients, right?
Is that app based or is it web page
Both.
based? Okay,
Both,
so it's like I have a lot of
I'll send you guys invites.
random internet leads on Chime that I don't have saved in my phone.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, you can upload your entire database
Okay, cool.
into it.
Like CSV file.
Yeah, and you know, it's also amazing. This company is probably one of the best customer service of any company I've ever worked with, because they'll help you upload the CSV file. If there's a little like button right here that I can just ask a question and they will get with you. Like, I can't even believe it, to be honest with you. It's so great. Yeah. Well, so CMA is, I've got a really great thing for CMA, okay? And we'll get into that another time. But I think that you guys, if you want to do a CMA, do a video CMA, and I'll explain how to do that, okay? Because that way you're still running your regular CMA from MLS. And it's okay that it may not be perfect, but when you run it and you do a certain couple of things with the video and then you record yourself talking about it and you send them the video, it's super powerful. All right, so this one, I didn't get into the I didn't get into prettifying this because there's just too many things to put on here. But I want to talk about the pre-approval process. I want to talk about the mortgage. Does anyone need to take a break real quick? Or
I'm good, I just
Yeah, like cramp,
Yep.
right? And between my shoulder.
Sometimes we need to stand up. I just want to make sure. The pre-approval process is something that you guys should understand front, back, and center. And the reason when you hear all of this stuff, then you're like, oh, that's why this one took 2 weeks. That's why this one was 1 day. That's why this one, right? So, and when you learn all this stuff and then you are a list agent and you ask the loan officer if some of this stuff is done, you're going to realize how quality of an approval it is. don't just go off the piece of paper, because sometimes it's a blanket piece of paper that even doesn't even look like as much as they did. Always call the loan officer to find out what was done, right? Because my basic pre-approval doesn't say a whole lot, but my initial pre-approval, we send out a really clear thing that you guys can copy and paste along with sending the pre-approval, so that it says all the things that we've done on it. So when we are doing a pre-approval process, okay, accurate information, email, personal phone number, not business, landline, if possible, for texting purposes. When you guys are grabbing a lead isn't a lead unless you know their last name, can't be Tony Buyer, and you have their email address, right? Because that's not a lead if you haven't spent enough time to get that kind of information. And we don't attack it first, we do what we do out front, even on the phone, understanding about people first, right? And then this stuff comes freely. So we're gonna go through, let's see. These are the things that we're gonna go up through. Okay, we're gonna talk about what a pre-approval is, pre-qualified, why work with a lender that has sphere of influence. We kind of talked about that. How do I pre-qualify as an agent? Here's some of the things to ask, right? Are you a first-time home buyer? Have you ever purchased a home before? What property type and occupancy are you looking for? Cash or loan, right? So we'll talk more in depth about these things. If a loan, how much are you putting down? Do you own other homes? Those are super important things for you guys to know, because you might feel that you have this great, perfect client. They live here locally. They're looking for an investment property. They have a great job, but maybe they're self-employed and maybe they don't declare the income. And maybe they had 12 other properties that they're already financed, and they're showing losses on all of their properties so that they don't have to pay taxes on them. And we have to take all of that out of their income. So the more you know, the better. Another great thing to ask, if they bought a home before, what was that experience like for you? Let them talk. What was the best part that your realtor did for you? What was the hardest part of transaction, or the transaction that you didn't like? Because then they'll tell you how to work with them. Okay, super, super important information. So the difference between pre-approval, we're going to talk about that by showing you, right? So I have to prove these things to an underwriter. I have to approve their ability to pay, their credit. Just because FHA says 580 minimum doesn't mean I'm going to get an approval over the overall credit profile. 580 is minimum, right? 580, if they've got a couple disputes, FHA says you got to remove those disputes, or you got to go to a 43% debt to income ratio, right? Actually 35%, sorry. It's like cuts, they're never going to get approved, right? So if they've got disputes on their credit, they have to remove them. Income, the ability to repay isn't just income, it's length of job history, all this stuff, job history, all of this comes into place, right? Assets and type of property are all things that we are looking at, because if it's a condo, the condo has got to get approved too for financing, just alongside the buyer. Ability to repay rule. These are the things that I have to meet. Well, it's not just give me your 30 days pay stubs, right? It's not just, do you have W-2s, do you have 2 years? It's current or reasonably expected income or assets other than the value, like all of these things, right? Debts, alimony, child support obligations, monthly debt to income ratio, credit history, monthly payments for property taxes and insurance on all properties owned, on any simultaneous loans secured for the same property. Sometimes people are getting a piggyback loan, or they just did a HELOC on their house that doesn't show up on a credit report, and that's what they're using for down payment. So my point is, these take time to find out. And if I did a pre-qualification on someone where I let them determine whether they're pre-qualified or not, based on just asking a question and them giving me an answer without any fact finding, and backing it up with documentation, eventually this is what the underwriter has to review, right? Yes,
Alimony, can it be considered income?
yes, it is, as long as it's gonna continue for a further 3 years and you've received it on time 3 months in a row.
Nazareth,
I am listening. I know mine, I don't have it for another 3 years. That was my issue. This was my last
Yeah, that's a
year.
tough one.
Yeah.
And I recommend everybody to ever get child support or alimony to go through the state, because then it's always going to come unless they're just they don't have the ability to pay. The problem is someone will forget to pay, and they'll pay twice in a month. That doesn't count as every month received for the last 3 months. So sometimes,
Yep.
yeah, right, you know that?
Yeah, I do, just from my personal situation. Yes, that's correct. He will sometimes pay once a month or double up, and yeah, it's not consistent.
And the reason why banks become difficult isn't just their bureaucracy or added criteria or lowered DTI, things like that. It's the fact that the person taking that application is a application taker, not an experienced, typically. I can't tell for everybody. Typically not an experienced loan officer. They rely on the processor underwriter to tell them if it's okay. I don't want to get to that point to know if I've got a good loan. So I have to learn everything that an underwriter needs to know.
Can you call employers?
I cannot personally, but yes, we have a system for that. As a loan officer, I can't do certain things because I could skew it.
Do you, give them a warning if you're gonna call the employer? Do you let them know, or is that something that just happens?
No, because when you fill out a mortgage, you should assume we're calling your employer, right?
That's
As opposed to the
call
opposite.
Employer and they got upset about it.
Well, they sign a written verification of employment form. They don't read what they sign,
No.
right? So they sign a credit authorization form, which allows us to do that. Now, I typically tell people, right, if you got a salary of $75,000 a year, I don't need to call your employer. I don't need a written verification plan. But if you have bonus, overtime, if you have variable hours, if you've got anything that I need a 2-year history of, we don't necessarily call your employer, right? Sometimes it's available automatically online that their employer is already set up. But if it's not readily available for us, then we have to call the employer, send a written verification of employment form. They have to fill it out. Their HR knows what to do. They're used to doing this. And we have to call 10 days before we close to make sure you're still employed. So, and for the person that got upset, that's kind of like, sorry, you're asking someone to give you a bunch of money. They need to know if you're applied, if you applied, right? But I can understand, I've had that happen myself. And I even told them we were calling, and I had someone who wasn't sure if they were going to get the house that they were interested in. We're right there, that almost getting pre-approved. And we had to get their tip income, and they kept telling their employer, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And I'm like, do you want to be pre-approved or not? And they got angry with us. And I'm like, she keeps asking for pre-approval, yet denying us to be able to do it, Just sometimes that's just gonna happen, right? So verifying information. All of that information they fill out, I have to verify. To verify through their tax returns, I have to verify through credit. We have to verify something called data verify, and it determines whether or not you've got things like student loans that are in default, or you've defaulted on a mortgage, or you have something that is outstanding, tax liability that you haven't cleared up or made an agreement with. But all of these things happen, and the ATM QM rule, right, is all of these things are things that we have to follow, okay? And this means, these things mean, there are 8 underwriting factors that we must create. We have to be the attorney and send the information to the underwriter, who is the judge that goes by the guidelines, not personal opinion. And we have to make sure that we're meeting all of these things. And during a loan, that has to happen. And depending upon, at the very first review, which is your initial underwriting review for your loan commitment, depends upon how many conditions, because sometimes we send something and their bank statement shows $100 payment, $100 payment, $100 payment on these months. And you're like, who is that to? They'll ask, is this a loan? Right? So it's so much more deep than anyone knows. And this is the minutia that's why I have a team, because I could never, ever get out and sell and do things to help people if I was the one doing all this all the time, right? It's so tough. So, and if you have a loan officer that doesn't have a team, they're going to be a little bit less able to serve because they're not doing it, right? So you got to determine, right? So you don't have to know all this. What you have to know is it's being done. You don't have to commit this to memory. What I want to show you is how much stuff actually has to happen behind the scenes, right? So credit. We have to look at recent applications. We have to see, like you'll see on the credit report, how many times people have been inquired, and then we have to send them a letter to them to sign that says, did you get a loan here? Did you get a loan here? And sometimes, guess what? They got a brand new Toyota that they didn't tell you about. It's not on their credit report, but they got a loan for it, and now they don't qualify anymore, right? And if I just did it by the credit report and didn't ask those questions, right, then we'd be screwed, you know? So payment history, credit cards, loans, all those things are important. Credit utilization is important. All of these types of things here, all of these things are what determines people's credit scores and overall credit profile. And like I said, you could have a 640, but you have 3 disputes on there that are artificially hitting it at 640, and all of a sudden it's a 540 because you removed the 3 disputes, right? So and FHA, sometimes you'll be like, well, this bank wants more requirements for FHA. Last year, we didn't need any of this stuff, and it's true. And that's not even for the bank. Sometimes the banks do have extra stuff, but FHA, depending upon how many defaults they've had in the past 6 months, they keep this running score and they rate your state, whether or not you're a high risk state or a low risk state. As soon as you become a high risk state, now we have to have all these compensating factors for certain scores. And we have to provide rent verification forms, which sometimes takes time. So sometimes I got approvals that take 4 weeks because it's just so slow getting information, you know, and I could have sent them out pre-qualified. I'd be scared to death of them going into contract, and I don't like to live that way, you know, so I don't like to live that way. I have did I tell you the story last time about, I'm not sure if I told you or not, I might have, but it was about, I pre-qualified a client for realtor, and they would have needed $6,500 more to close, and they didn't have it. So I was pre-qualified. So I did, but I based it on them getting that money. So you can't go into contract till you know where this money's coming from, and then you can't. And I can do that. I can set up the what ifs. If they can provide the what ifs, and you know what they are, must sell their house, must do this, right? And that's what I put on the pre-qualification, because rather than saying, well, no, that's not done yet, not some people will do that, not pre-qualified, right? But if you know that, hey, I'm getting an insurance check of $6,500, and perfect, right? It's just got to come before we close. Everyone needs to know that. they didn't know where the money was gonna come from.
That was my lady that thankfully decided not to buy.
Yeah,
She had to either have more money to
Yeah.
put down or,
yeah.
they were gonna.
I mean, sometimes you just give them the alternative because sometimes they do have some way to do it, or miraculously the next month they get some kind of check that they didn't know was coming. You know, it helps us with the opportunities. But but anyway, they got with their cousin loan officer pre-qualified them, went back to the realtor, said, hey, my cousin said we can do this way, blah, blah, blah. Went all the way to closing. I got a call from the realtor 3 days after closing. That didn't happen. We did, so they went against your advice. And I told them not to, but they wanted to be in this contract, and so I did. And they need $6,500 more in order for this to happen. And what she said was, and the only place they can get it from is me.
Oh.
I said, so I'm trying to decide whether my broker says to not give them the money. But these people really need a house. I said, you just told me what you want to do. I said, you want to give them the money, don't you? I said, then it's okay to credit them the money. You will get it back someday. And now somebody else, right? I mean, they're going to rave about this person for doing this. They closed. You could say no. You could demand your funds that aren't even going to come anyway because they're not going to close, right? Or you could have something on your board that says you closed this much money, and even though you didn't make money on it, you still have it on your MLS history, right? So it's still a win.
Yeah.
But it's your decision. I'm not trying to convince you guys to do that.
Seller credits are good.
Yes, they already have the seller credit.
Oh,
There's
okay.
maximum amount of seller credit. They already had it.
Uh,
They needed a seller credit plus $6,500. Yeah.
It's funny what
They were broke.
And even though FHA can do 6%, the market can't handle a 6% seller credit, about 3%,
Oh, I
right?
see.
Even though you can get a 6%, unless you're doing it from a family member and that house is good, they're just really selling it to them very dirt cheap, you can do that, you know. But yeah, seller credit is the first thing I go for. And I'd say 75% of my clients right now need seller credits to help them. And I just had another one that we sent them how much it's gonna be after a seller credit. And the realtor comes back to me and says, they're having a hard time finding a price point that works. Because they're looking for houses that are 3 days on the market. You're not gonna get a seller credit there unless you offer higher, and they weren't offering higher. So he comes to me and he says, hey, client said they got the money and they're going to go ahead and not need the seller credit, and we're putting an offer in. I'm like, okay, like, you're going by what someone told you. You've got my pre-approval. Guess what? They get the estimate and they say, oh, we didn't know that it was gonna be this much. We need another $9,000. I said, guess what? That seller credit was for, right? I mean, this is my area of expertise. I don't know everything, and my gosh, I'm gonna learn something from somebody if I can. And we learn a lot from things that are curveballs, right? But that's just it. So income wise, I'm checking to your job history for each job. If you got 3 jobs right now, you can't use them unless you've got 3 jobs for 2 years. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the old Saturday Night Live. I got 5 jobs, man. You lazy bum, I got 8 jobs. The Jamaican family is so funny, but this is what it reminds me of, right? So each type of income, tips, commission, bonuses, variable income requires verifications of employments for 24-month average. I can sometimes get away with 12 months on these uncertain circumstances. Okay, but most of the time it's 24 months average. If you move in a commission job or a local business income job, or if you are a delivery driver locally and you want to buy a house, you lived in Texas, you want to buy a house in Florida, I can't approve you unless you have a job offer for the truck driver, right? Or a transfer letter, or if it's a truck driver that drives cross country, it doesn't matter where they live, we can have a letter that says they can work anywhere. And if you're sales, if you're a realtor in Texas and now you start a business here, your money is leaving Texas unless you've got a big team that you left in Texas, right? That we have a team lead for. We have to prove all that stuff so that the income will continue. So many times we have to see 6 months of commissions for commissioned people, right? And realtors, usually you can't prove that until you put your tax returns in, typically. But base pay, hourly, salary, all that stuff, what you make now, I can use now. If you have variable hours, then we have to get a 24. If I see a check that says 30 hours, check that says 40 hours, and it wasn't 10 hours of vacation time, that's variable hours. I have to now get a 24-month history. And maybe it was just 1 week, and that's okay. That's why also we do the written verification employment, because then it'll come back, minimum hours 40. Okay, that was an anomaly. That's why we have to do those things, And sometimes what I'll do with the tips, commissions, incomes is get your 30 days pay stubs now. But if they got it, sometimes they can access their last pay stub of 22, their last pay stub of 21, right? And give those to me, and I got a pretty good idea, unless they've gotten raises in it. Now we got a written verification limit, because we have to use the lesser until we see the raise of the written verification point, right? So I've got one doing that right now. They wanted to make an offer on Monday, and we are Friday, and we're not done yet. And they're going to make an offer on a really tight house. And I'm not gonna. And they could get frustrated with me and go somewhere else. I risk that by doing a good job. They're not. They understand. But I'm sure people do. They just, why is this so hard? All of the stuff I'm trying to show you. That's why it's, if you have had a guy also that doesn't make enough income, and he never told me he had a fiance, like we didn't talk about that yet. He honed me in on a certain thing, and I didn't think to ask if anyone else to go on. But then we're in a conversation talking about we didn't have enough. He goes, well, I didn't tell you, my fiance is a nurse. She just started a job 3 weeks ago, so she doesn't have a 2-year history. I said, she just got out of school? It's like, yeah, like I can use the school history for that. Sometimes I miss questions too, but the more you go back and talk and ask when you fact find, sometimes that takes time too, because I might have missed something. Because we were talking about this fire over here, of not being able to, so it's very easy.
Based what she's made that 3 weeks and extended through a 2-year, because if she
As
wasn't at school, she would have been making that. Is that
Well, as a nurse, if you've got a job, we're just taking your history that you have history of being a nurse,
gotcha?
because you had school.
It's not income.
And then if she is PRN, very hard to do. If she's got $12 an hour, 40 minimum hours, we do a written verification employment with a pay stub, and that's what we can project up. You can't project any of her overtime, any of the extra pays, right? Family income, if you work for your parents on FHA, we may have to reduce your income because your parents could tell anything. They could fill out anything, right?
So even if it's true, they skew it just because.
They can. It may be reduced, right? If I've got W-2s that match up, but all of a sudden I got a brand new raise and they're making $600-700 more, you might not be able to get that done until it shows up on the last, So that is underwriter discretion, and the more facts I have about it, because if that pay stub today came out and they're applying for a loan, or they got it 6 weeks ago, I might be able to use it if they got it 6 weeks ago, right? But if it just looks like, I've even gotten people raises to get them approved. Not from family, from their employers, right? I knew the employer, they sent me their person to get approved. I'm like, do they have any raises coming up? Like, how are they doing? Because they need about X more dollars. Like, you need to pay them more. And I'll even kind of joke with them. I'm like, how do you even have them as an employee? So I've had people give raises in the middle of a contract to help make sure, because they got, we had flood that was much higher than expected. We were shopping right at the tippy top. I can approve you on FHA for 56.9% income, but the minute it goes a penny over, you're not approved anymore, right? We can have some things to adjust it by having some trickery with insurance to then add coverage later. There's some things that can be adjusted that sometimes it just can't be adjusted enough, you know? So calling the employer, hey, can you give me a raise? I will stop at nothing, right? So self-employed, 2 years tax returns, 24-month average. If someone has 5 years, sometimes I can just use their last year. Their previous year may be terrible, but their last year is good, and they got a 5-year history. If I go Freddie Mac, which is also conventional, I can typically use just last year. And if I put it in to Fannie, Fannie might tell me that I can or not, but I have to also read the DU, which is automated underwriting, that takes my loan, throws it up against the guidelines, and gives me requirements for that loan. I have to read those things and I have to conform with them. If I'm not reading them, I could certainly miss something that's not normal to ask for. If there's more than a 10% decline in your income from last year to this year, we can only use your lowest year, right? We have to use this year's income, even if you made a bunch more. There is a certain point of income decline that we cannot use your income at all, because it looks like you are losing your business. We might have to have, and almost always have to have in these cases, a profit and loss statement from this year to show that your income has continued or gotten better. Other income, child support received for at least 3 months and 3 years continued. Alimony, same. Trust income must have 3 years of continuance. It can be your own trust, but I just got word that it might be changing November 1, which really stinks because I use that all the time, and I even brag about how we can do such a great job with it. So I told them, I said, we got to do this October. I said, I'm not trying to make this a pressing thing, but you're going to run out of chances for this if you want to do it, right? So dividend income, Social Security income can be grossed up. Even if someone doesn't have a ton of other taxable income, we can gross it up to 25%, depending upon what kind of loan. Disability income can also be grossed up. Retirement income, all of these things can be used. And sometimes people just get random other income from different sources, like dividends. Like you might even get stock income because your family owns something for such a long time, but you forget you have it or whatever. So the type of occupancy matters, because if I'm approving you for a house or a condo, I have to take into account, and oftentimes we're not accounting for an HOA. If someone's got to max out their budget, we got to find them kind of a house, not an HOA, because every $50 worth of HOA, now if it's a $9 HOA, it might be okay, but $50 HOA decreases you $10,000 in spending. And people are not actually approved for a loan amount. They're approved for a payment, right? A monthly payment. And depending upon the rate, higher, lower, that approval goes up and down. And as the rates are continued, people's approvals are going down, right? So if someone's shopping for 3 months and I had them at a 7 and now they're at a 7.25, like, and we were right at the tippy top, you know, unless we have really cheap insurance. So that's why it's also important for you and I to work together when we're working with someone to keep their expectations right. And my thing is to tell them, like, if you need a seller credit, you can't ask for a lower price on the seller credit. Like, you're gonna have to build that in. Unless you're 30 days out, you're not getting 3%. Maybe 20 days out, you're gonna get 3%, because they're about ready to do a price reduction right now, because sellers still think they should sell their house in 5 minutes. So that's where we can take advantage right now of seller's paradigm. Because really, 3 months is normal.
Yeah.
Right? And we're at 3 months, but they're freaking out because so-and-so sold their house in 5 minutes last year, you know? So we can take advantage of that. No showings for 15 days. I send a contract in with 3% seller credit at list price, you'll probably take it, you know? So that's a paradigm that will go away the longer we're at 3 months of inventory, because that will become the new normal. The paradigm of the rates at 3 to almost 8 is going away, because the people that are entering the market don't remember that, because 2 years ago, they weren't thinking about the house at all. Right? So now we're starting, so the paradigms are working for us here and over here simultaneously, right? Does that make sense? So if primary must work locally, or you have to have a remote income. Moving, can you work remote, must have job offer, transfer letter. If it's a secondary or investment, these two don't matter. FHA is actually 30 days of seasoning, but funds need to be seasoned for 60 days. So I got a guy with $35,000 cash. I'm like, well, is that in your pillow or a coffee can? You know, right now working with the same guy that has the fiance with money. So like multiple problems usually stack up on these things that we have to adjust and account for. So we can put a certain amount of income, right? We can put a certain amount of cash in, especially if you're self-employed, you're kind of used to having that cash, right? But there's only a certain amount until we can't use it or back it up. And what I have to do with that is like, well, where'd that cash come from? He's like, well, I sold the boat, I sold this. I said, you have an invoice for it? If I have an invoice and a registration that you owned it, I can match the cash up, put that deposit in, and we can trace that deposit as legitimate, you know? But it can be money can be a gift, must be directly related, gifts on primary. Second home has 5% minimum contribution, so you can't get that money from a gift. Okay, not allowed 2 to 4 investment properties, may not be an interested party. The seller can't give the gift. And the realtor parent can't give the gift, but the other parent can, as long as it's from their account. So if you have parents of someone and the realtor is doing the transaction, and that money and gift are coming out of her account or a joint account, can't use it. But if the other person has an account and they can give a gift, we can use it. I got caught on that one when I was newer. I didn't know, like I just thought parents could give gifts. I had to make them change all their stuff around, but you know, so they were not happy about it, but it still worked, you know. 401ks and investments, we have to reduce. And we also have to have a letter that says the terms and withdrawal letter in order to count it as either potential cash flows or reserve requirements. FHA can do single family 2 to 4 units and condos, but condos on FHA really suck. VA, single family 2 to 4 units, and condos on VA can suck. Conventional, single family, 2 to 4 units, condos, this is where we typically are trying to do our condominium financing, because we can do 3% first time home buyer in a condo. And if you're putting less than 25% down, you have to have a budget. Condo has to have a 10% reserve budget. And sometimes they don't. And I've even went to a board meeting and increased somebody's reserve budget. Shady Brook condominiums group, you guys know what that is in Bradenton. It's not been known to be a great run place, but I literally went to their budget meeting with the realtor and said, you guys have all of this funds in repairs. You need to move some of it to reserves. And they did, and we closed the line. like I said, sometimes you gotta go up. That was my first, not my first one, but maybe my fifth or sixth loan ever. And then everyone's like, I can't believe you got Shady Brook approved for financing, FHA, right? USDA, they piggyback on conventional. Occupancies. Conventional is the only thing, unless it's non-qualifying mortgage, that can do second or investment properties. They do primary, second, or investment. FHA, VA, USDA, primary residence only. Appraisal and insurance. These are super big issues, okay? This changed, this is 5 years now. But sometimes citizens can still get away with 3, but it's 5 years mostly. Lenders require 2 years. So we used to be the most stringent because insurance companies didn't care how many years left the roof was, or it was 1, but we were the most stringent. Now we're not. If it's 20 years, we need a wind mitt and 4-point. Some insurance companies require it 10 years old. Past 25 years, difficult to insure. It's this. I wrote this before Ian, and it's even increasing, right? So no appliances needed. People think that FHA, you can't do FHA or VA without appliances, but the only appliances you need are if you have those stoves that are drop-in and bolt-in bottoms. Those are permanent fixtures. They're considered permanent fixtures. You have to have that there. You can't have a hole in a countertop. But if it's a slide-in, slide-out fridge, slide-in, slide-out stove, microwave, or dishwasher, you don't have to have any of them there. If they're there, though, they have to work. So we had one that was, you open the door of the dishwasher and it would fall apart. You'd have to, they're gonna deny that one. So you just remove it. You remove it from the contract, you remove it completely, but since the appraiser saw it, they kind of had to put a new one in, so if they're there, they must work 100%. FHA, VA, they look a little bit more for safety. They're the only times that you're gonna peek your head into an attic area. They're looking for open outlets, all these things, the doors, windows, they all must work. They can't be cracked. You have to have floor surfaces. If it's pulled up carpet with concrete and tack strips, it's not approvable. Even conventional, it's not going to allow that. So conventional mostly looks at the value. But if you have a hole that you could trip in the grass, you can actually, they'll flag that to be fixed in FHA. If you have, always go around and look at your house and make sure there's no touching debris, no touching plants or trees to the roof, because they will have you remove it, right? So what now? So all the info that we just talked about, we must have documents for to be underwritten. We have to pull the credit. We have to remove locks. Sometimes that takes 3 to 4 days. If someone locked their credit, we have to remove disputes. We have to address all red flags that come up. All loans go through automated underwriting. AUS, automating underwriting system. DU means desktop underwriter. That's Fannie. And we also run FHA and VA through that. We can run them through Loan Prospector as well. But AUS for Freddie Mac, which is another conventional, is called LP, Loan Prospector. So if you ever hear of DU, now you know what it is. If you ever hear Gus, it's USDA. If you ever hear LP, it's Freddie, right? So, and those are the things, it takes all your info, as long as it's accurate, and sends it to a cloud that compares it to all the guidelines. And then it gives you whether it's approved eligible or whether there's a problem. And then what are the things we have to address? And we have to read that and make sure that we have documentation for all of it. Right?
Let's do land loans.
We do, but they gotta be big. So I just go to, I think Bank of the Ozarks is a really good place for that.
Okay.
So, We
Might
have-
want to buy our solar influence.
yeah,
The person I have, she wants 2 to 5 acres.
A quarter is just enough.
Right.
Just let her know she doesn't need that.
She likes goats and
Goats
lawns.
and llamas, okay. We have to verify the income, electronic or manual, which is what we were talking about, and we can verify your assets too. If somebody fills out the application and just logs into their bank, it'll auto give it to us. So that's great. And then we have to run fraud guard and data verify.
Sorry.
That's okay. So now the difference, right, of a pre-qualification is the borrower enters their information from memory. They state their income, they state their assets, and they're not always run by AUS. Knowing all the stuff that you know now, is this the kind of thing that you want to shop with, right? And I know that you already know this, but I think when you understand all the stuff that actually goes behind closing a loan, and you look at this, that you want to try not to just use someone who's pre-qualified, right? And pre-approved, right? Borrower fills that out, loan officer team double checks, they verify the income, verify the asset, verify inquiries, run fraud guard, data verify, run AUS, and we get documentation for all of it. These are the different things that I can get when I'm running AUS. This is great. This is the only one we can move forward with. Approved and eligible means the borrower is good, but there's something wrong with the property. Okay, and maybe it's something we did wrong. Or they're trying to put 25% down on an investment property, right? Which won't work. Refer eligible is typically the property is great, the client's not, can't go forward. Refer with caution, we can do those, but then all of a sudden you're at 35% debt to income. Like, it's just not worth doing it in today's world. So that's it. Basically, which ones do you want shopping, right? So once we hit the loan process, the application date you guys have, all I have to do is enter the address to it, and the pre-approval becomes the application. That's as simple as that. Those are there for people who you got into contract with that really didn't even get a pre-approval, that 5-day period. Typically, we're done really fast. So disclosures come out, they have to sign intent to proceed. They have to sign the 1003, which is the application. They have to sign that loan estimate. We order the appraisal. We do initial underwriting. It comes out with approved with conditions and a loan commitment. And then from there, we're processing binding insurance, receiving title, appraisal received, subsequent underwriting submissions for any conditions, final underwriting, and clear to close. Closing disclosure's got to be out within 3 days. We're always hitting that unless there's some problem. The appraisal didn't come back for some reason. We don't have that problem. Balancing CD with title, send the package, funding docs, and on a refinance, they have right of rescission 3 days, where it funds in 4 days. HELOC HECM purchases have the same thing. If they're doing a reverse mortgage purchase, they could get out of it 3 or 4 days after closing. So, so all that stuff, I realize it's a lot of info, and it's a lot of info that you don't have to commit to memory. But did you know all of these things happen behind the scenes? And now that you know how detailed it is, this just helps you guys, in my opinion, understand why it might take 2 weeks to get an approval, why we're like, we don't know yet, you know? Because otherwise someone could think we're sitting on our butts and not just doing anything, you know? For you guys, don't pressure the approval, garbage in, garbage out. The loan process is gonna take what it can. We can't make it move typically any faster, but we are very fast with what we're doing, usually 24-hour, 48-hour turnaround time. Set expectations with borrowers when you're talking to them, right? And especially if they're, hey, oh, I'm pre-qualified with Quicken, yeah, but probably not. Let's just get you to Tony. Tony will call you. And don't say, can I have Tony call you? Just say, hey, Tony's gonna reach out to you. We've got a great person to help you. Oh, well, I already got this. That's great. He's gonna give you a second opinion. Nobody balks at that. Very few. If you just have an adamant person, then obviously, you know, that's it. And ask us, what can you help with? Because I'll typically say, hey, can you tell them we've been waiting on these docs, and just let them know, hey, just check in, ask how it's going, and say, Tony thinks it's going great, but they really need your documentation, you know, because you guys have the keys to the car, so to say, where you used to actually drive people in your car, even though now they follow you, you know, you guys have the keys to the car, the keys to the you know, showings, right? Learn how to handle those questions to help us when they're asking. Now that you know these things, it helps you. Well, they're asking for this. Well, they're calling my employer, right? You know what I mean? You have a little bit more fuel for that. And then, yeah, ask some questions. This is something you guys should have and take a picture of. These are the things you should be asking every client. This is your approval process.
If you haven't purchased in 3 years, you're considered a first home time buyer again.
Yeah. If you haven't not purchased, if you haven't
50%
owned,
home buyers again.
if you haven't owned a home in 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sold last year, so by the time we buy it.
Yeah. So right. And the only thing that allows you, by the way, is 3% instead of 5%. There are also down payment assistance, but I want you guys to real quick understand that if values are going up 4.9% a year, and I'm taking enough seller credit, like to help with closing costs, and I've got a giant down payment assistance, I have to pay that off when I go to refinance. So people that are hitting 7 and 8% right now on those, they're not getting out of those 7 and 8% for a lot of time until we can refinance them at 95 LTV, or they come into cash. So we have a double-edged sword putting people in with those right now, because they're not going to be able to refinance anytime soon. So with these things are super important, because this helps you understand the quality of your client, the quality of let me be clear, the quality of their ability to purchase, okay? Not the quality of the person. We're not judging them by any of this, but we are judging and setting our own expectations on these items. And then the more of this you get to me, the better, you know? These are things that are really great to know. Yeah, I mean, that was the class. This, again, I told you guys the last time, last class is more of like, pump us up. This class is a lot of minutia to get through, but it's very important to understand it, you know, especially if you're newer in the business, right? And it's very important to understand what goes through this, you know, behind the scenes. So,
Thank you.
yeah, and next time, we don't have to do this one. I was going to ask you guys, there's a couple of really great classes. I've got like 12, 13, 14, I don't even know how many classes. I think it's super important to work on classes that are going to get you leads and sell, right? We did the first part of this. I have a lead conversion class. It's a little bit of minutia about details of how long leads convert, why they convert, how long they convert. I'd like to do that in a couple weeks, but I think some of the first things to do are classes like personal branding. And I realize that you guys are branded as Simply Sold, but it doesn't mean a logo. It really just means, how are you appearing? How are you aligning with everybody else out there? What does your social media look like, right? And that's a really good one. And there's a couple of other ones that might be pertinent. So Just want to let you, that's, you know. And video CMA, there's a really great, there's a class, how to get more listings in a low inventory market, which has the video CMA in it, which we'll do pretty soon too. So you guys have any questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Yeah, yeah.
For homestead purpose things,
Uh-huh.
if you're in a primary and you move into Florida, if you stay in Florida and move to a new primary home, it's just a quick, easy transfer of homestead. Or-
It's not a quick, easy transfer. It takes time.
Okay,
But yes, if you already had homestead, okay, you have to fill out all the paperwork because it's kind of a pain in the neck to fill it out and get all your documentation in. If you've already been homesteaded, the next year, as long as you do it right on the property before the homestead deadline, since we pay taxes in arrear, it will be applied to the next year and you won't lose it.
so
If you miss the deadline, you will go back to regular and it will be there for a year. There's nothing to rectify it.
it's a 12-month period?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as you have your paperwork in within the 12 months.
No, you have to have it in before February, March. There's a, I forget what the time frame is, but there is a deadline in the year to get your homestead done.
I'm pretty sure it's March.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I
March.
have it, yeah, put it by March of that year.
So if you sell in December, you have to have it in by March. Doesn't mean January. January, you have until the next March.
Okay. What if you don't sell? What if you keep that as your secondary or investment property at that point?
Same
Same
thing.
thing. So
Same thing. If
from
you
the
want to
day you
change.
close,
Yeah.
before March, you've got to
Yeah.
have that.
Yes, before March, from the day you close. So it could be 3 months. It could be a year.
And it goes for the next year.
Yeah, because we pay taxes in arrears, so. yeah.
Where do they access those docs? Is that from the tax account?
You'll do right at the tax, at the tax collector office, and you'll need like an electric bill, you'll need a couple of things, your deed, driver's licenses, stuff like that.
You can upload most of it online.
Yeah, you can do it all online, yeah. And if you become an expert at that, that is one of the best things to share in February and March on social media.
Yeah.
So many people don't know that.
I've noticed a trend of people I've seen with their social media that like,
When you apply for it, if you are going to apply for it, video record it.
yeah. And you see like people doing like the hurricane preparedness,
Yeah.
having a conversation about, hey, this is what you should do. And then I just see
Yeah.
something else coming up that somebody did stuff like that. So it's so funny that you don't ever think about, I'm like, oh, the cool social media stuff. And I'm like, what does that even look like? And it's like,
Well, and that's where the, hey, Nazare, do you have any questions?
And I do not. I'm actually was just about to say I'm going to jump off now. I don't have
Okay.
any questions, but thank you. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.